Hello and welcome. This is Cheryl. Thank you so much for joining me today. Today I am sharing day 7 of the 12 days of Stitchmas. This is a stitching die advent calendar from Spellbinders. There are 12 different days. I have all of the videos from the calendar in the same playlist. So if you've missed a day, you can find it in the same playlist as this video. Each day I'm opening up one of the windows, sharing what the die is, and then creating a card with that particular die doing the stitching. So today we have a die set that says fa la la. So I am going to do my die cutting off screen. There's no point in doing that on screen because it's fairly monotonous. But this is a great one. It's perfect for Christmas, but I think you could even have fun with it outside of Christmas as well. So off screen, I did my die cutting. I did my shadows for my letters in poppy cardstock. The letters themselves are die cut from classic white cardstock, and I'm going to be doing my die cutting with some gold floss. Now, anytime you do stitching dies with Spellbinders, and you die cut them, they put a little indent where they intend for that stitching to go. So for these letters, they intend for them to be crisscrossed. I want my crosses of my floss to go the same way. So for every single letter, I'm starting in the top left hole, and then I'm going down one way to do half of the stitches. And then once I get to the bottom, I flip over and do the other half. So I always have the same thread going the same way on top of the other one. So I do this with every single one of the letters. Now, when you look at the die set, there's one F shadow, one A shadow, one L shadow. So obviously you need to do multiples of different letters if you want to have multiples of those letters. And there's no need to have multiples of the same dies within the set. So if you look at your die set and think you should have 2 L's and 3 A's, no, we have one of each letter. We just cut multiples of the different ones. So when I do my stitching, I always start and use a little piece of Best Ever craft tape to secure that end of the floss. And then I do the same thing when I end my stitching. Now these letters, even though that one side that the stitching on is wider than the other, it's still narrower than the tape. So I do use my detail scissors in order to cut the tape smaller so that it doesn't cover any of the holes. Once I'm done my letters, I use my Barely Art glue in the fine line bottle, put glue on the back and glue it to the shadow. And then I have some sewing clips that will hold that in place while it is drying. That way I don't have to sit there and hold it with my hand. It can dry while I'm working on stitching other pieces. So I find those clips really, really handy with the stitching dies. Even like clothespins would work. It's just, again, you don't have to hold them with your hands. They could be sitting to the side drying while you are working on something else, but those clips hold them nice and tight so you have good contact with the cardstock and with the floss in between. And having that floss in between secures that in place. So I know that I'm not going to have a piece of floss kind of going on its own when I have my card done. And then having that Best Ever craft tape taping down those floss ends also helps. I like doing both of them to make sure that that sewing is nice and secure there. So once I did the F, then I am doing the A. I'm going to only do one of each letter on screen because obviously the duplicates and triplicates of the letters are going to be stitched exactly the same. And I did my die cutting with white and with red, but you can easily do different colors, obviously. For this particular calendar this year, I decided to go with a more traditional palette. Last year, I went a little bit more non-traditional, so you can check out some of the cards from last year as well. I did notice when I was creating these videos that there is still some of those 2024 Stitchmas calendars on the Spellbinders website. So if you missed out on that, you can actually still get them, which is really, really cool. So last letter here that I'm going to be stitching on screen is the L. And once again, same with the other ones. I start with the top left hole, going down one way and then reversing and doing the top stitch for each one of those cross stitches there. So the stitching is really, really easy. And I find having those lines there is really, really helpful. So you don't have to kind of figure out what someone was thinking. You can see exactly where they intend for that stitching to go. Now, saying that, you can get creative if you want. Rather than doing these letters as cross stitches, you could just do lines across attached or joining each one of those holes and do it differently. So you can get creative with it, not You don't have to do it exactly the way it was intended, but it's always nice, especially when you're newer to using stitching dies. It's always nice to know how it was designed and how it was intended. And then from there, if you feel like getting creative, you can absolutely get creative. So these are a great way just to add extra texture to cards, and it just gives a little bit of a different look from plain die cutting. So here are my letters done off screen. That A is just doing a little bit of drying, and while we're letting that dry, I'm going to work on the background of my card. So for my background, I'm using the Musical Notes embossing folder. This is a new one out this month. It's from the BB's Musical Notes collection, and I'm also going to be using the Musical Notes and Stave pop-up die. That's from that same collection. I am only die cutting the notes and the treble clef from that particular die though, and I'm die cutting them, or I die cut them in Gold Treasure cardstock with the mirror finish. I wanted to have some gold tying in with that gold stitching. You could easily do this in black, as traditional musical notes are as well, but I thought the gold just really tied in with that stitching and just gave it a little bit of extra texture. So my mat here is going to be that poppy cardstock. You can see this is the piece that I die cut the shadows for each of those layers in. I've done this with several of my videos. I do this often. It's just a way to extend your cardstock. Now, regular cardstock isn't necessarily as pricey as specialty cardstock, so I especially do it with specialty cardstocks, but it's always nice to know how to extend and how to stretch that cardstock, especially if you happen to be running low of it, or you maybe can't find it and you want to just stretch out what you have left. It's always fun and a great way to stretch that out. For the background from that Musical Notes and Stave pop-up die set, I die cut the clef, the stave, I don't know my musical terms anymore, from the back, and that is die cut out of some fern cardstock just to add a little bit of different color. Then I'm going to take my pieces that I die cut from the gold mirror cardstock. I'm going to put some on the musical clef and then a couple in the background. I'm trying to make sure that I'm putting notes where I'm not going to put my letters. I don't want my letters to cover up my notes. I want to be a little bit aware. So one of the fa's is going to, or a fa is going to go in the top left corner, a la is going to go in the top right corner, and then one of the la's is going to go in the bottom center-ish. You could put them right over the cliff, if the musical clef, if you wanted, and have the letters all together, but I think they'd be a little bit squishy. And I also wanted some of that music in the background to show up. Now, I also considered putting this fa la la with the, I think it was called Snow Notes. There's a die that came out in July and it's some snowmen singing. I think that this one would be fabulous with that as well. I ended up going with this one because I didn't want to necessarily take too much focus away from those stitched letters. So once I have my musical notes down, as well as a couple in the background, now I'm ready to add those words to the front of it. And because I have the stuff in the background in different colors and they're a little bit more muted, you can really see that the letters really do pop off, especially because they are outlined and shadowed with that red, and then the gold for those letters really shines and really coordinates beautifully with the gold notes. And I love the fact that because those gold notes are mirror, they catch the light when you tilt the card. If you wanted them to be a little bit more muted, you could always use some gold matte cardstock, and that would tie in really well as well, but it wouldn't be quite as flashy as the mirror cardstock. However, when it comes to Christmas stuff, I think you can get away with flashy a little bit more. Thank you so much for joining me for day 7 of the 12 days of Stitchmas. I will be back tomorrow and I will share day 8 with you.